Imagine a battlefield thousands of years ago. Smoke rises from the ruins of a city, blood flows on the ground, and the screams of warriors fill the air. Amidst the chaos, a chariot gallops by, pulled by wild horses that spit fire from their mouths. Atop the chariot stands a mighty figure, armed with a spear and shield, his eyes glowing red like embers. He is Ares, the Greek god of war, the lord of chaos, whose presence on the battlefield strikes fear even before swords clash. But despite being known as the god of war, Ares was not a highly revered figure among the Greeks. On the contrary, he was often insulted, humiliated, and even considered a failed god. How could such a powerful god, the son of Zeus and Hera, be hated by his own people? Ares' story is not simply one of victory or glory, but rather a tale of humanity's darkest traits: rage, violence, and bloodlust. He is not only a god who brings victory, but also disaster. With every step, he brings fear and terror, accompanied by his sons: Phobos, the god of fear, and Deimos, the god of terror. Today, we will explore the long story of Ares. From his birth on Olympus, his role on the battlefield, his forbidden love story, to how the Romans later transformed his image into a revered god. Is Ares simply a symbol of chaos? Or is he a reflection of humanity's darkest side? Let's explore the long story of Ares, god of war. Ares was born as the son of Zeus, king of the gods, and Hera, the great queen of Olympus. From this lineage, he should have been one of the most revered gods. However, from the beginning, Ares never received his father's full affection. Zeus viewed Ares as reckless, bloodthirsty, and dishonorable. In contrast, Athena, the goddess of war also born of Zeus, was seen as representing strategy, wisdom, and honorable victory. Athena has always been a symbol of noble, well-planned warfare, a war that brings glory to a nation. Ares, on the other hand, is merely a symbol of chaotic, bloody warfare, leaving only destruction. This difference prevented Ares from ever being truly accepted as a great god. But Hera, his mother, protected Ares. For Hera, Ares was proof of her family's strength. Though stubborn and brutal, he was still her son, inheriting courage and strength. In some stories, Hera is even said to have given birth to Ares herself, without Zeus's intervention, simply to rival Athena's. If this is true, then from the beginning, Ares has been a symbol of family struggle, the battle between mother and father, the battle between the brutal and wise sides of war itself. From childhood, Ares displayed an aggressive nature. He disliked rules and peace. While the other gods lived peacefully on Olympus, Ares craved the sound of swords, the smell of blood, and the cries of warriors. He grew into a man who constantly sought conflict, as if war were his sole purpose in life. Ares is depicted as a fearsome god of war. His weapons are the spear and shield, symbols of brutal close-quarters combat. He is never depicted as a god who provides intelligent strategy, but rather as one who encourages warriors to fight recklessly. Beside him were always his loyal followers: Phobos, the god of fear, and Deimos, the god of terror. With them, Ares rode a chariot pulled by wild, fiery horses. Imagine a mere soldier seeing this chariot on the battlefield. Even before Ares wielded his weapon, the soldiers' hearts were filled with fear. That was Ares' ultimate power, spreading inner turmoil. There's also the figure of Ares, the goddess of discord, who often accompanies Ares. Together, they embody the worst side of war: endless conflict, divisive strife, and destruction without true victory. It's no wonder the Greeks weren't particularly fond of Ares. They didn't build many large temples to him, unlike Athena or Apollo. They viewed Ares as a figure who brought more disaster than glory. However, the Romans had a different view. They adopted Ares as Mars, and instead made him the protector god of the state. Mars was worshipped as a symbol of military glory and national strength. This transformation demonstrates how a culture can view war from two perspectives. The Greeks saw its dark side, the Romans its glory. Ares was a bloodthirsty figure. In every battle that took place on the Greek mainland, he always intervened. To Ares, war was a stage, and humans were merely actors acting out tragic dramas for his amusement. However, despite being depicted as the god of war, Ares was often humiliated. He was not immune to injury. He could be defeated, even by mere mortals. The story of his battle with Heracles, or Hercules, is a vivid example. Heracles, the son of Zeus, and born a demigod, once fought Ares directly. In that fight, Heracles managed to wound Ares with his spear. The mighty Ares had to retreat from the battle, roaring in pain, and hide from the battlefield. For the Greeks, this story was a significant symbol. They believed that brute force without reason would never bring true victory, that even a single human, with courage and strategy, could defeat the god of war himself. Ares is also known as a god who doesn't care who he helps. Sometimes he sides with a particular nation, sometimes he supports its enemies. All that matters to him is one thing: the war must continue. Blood must continue to be shed. There are no stories of Ares defending justice or fighting for the truth. He only cares about chaos, screams, and destruction. On the battlefield, Ares appeared not as a leader with strategy, but as a fire that ignited the soldiers' rage. He shouted in their ears, inciting them, making them forget their fear and think only of killing. This is why many call Ares a god who controls not only the human body, but also their minds. Of all the stories about Ares, his involvement in the Trojan War is the most famous. The Trojan War itself is one of the greatest stories in Greek mythology. A war between the Greeks and the city of Troy that lasted for 10 years. The background to this war began with a story of love and kidnapping. Paris, a Trojan prince, kidnapped or carried off Helena, the wife of Menelaus, king of Sparta. This act was considered a great insult, so the Greeks mobilized a large force to attack Troy. However, this war was not just a human war. The gods were also involved, each taking their own side. Ares, true to his nature, couldn't help himself. He chose to side with the Trojans. Many reasons have been attributed, but one of the most well-known is his close relationship with Aphrodite. Aphrodite, the goddess of love whom Ares loved, sided with Troy because Paris was the winner of a beauty contest she won. So Ares, for the sake of his lover, sided with Troy. When Ares descended upon the battlefield, the Greek warriors felt utter terror. Along with Phobos and Deimos, he struck fear into the hearts of the soldiers. His spear tore through the enemy ranks, and his shouts sent many fleeing before the battle even began. For the Trojans, Ares' presence was a blessing. They felt protected by the god of war himself. However, this story didn't last long. In one battle, Ares faced Diomedes, a brave Greek hero. Diomedes was no ordinary warrior. He was blessed by Athena, the goddess of strategy. With her guidance, Diomedes was undaunted by Ares. The battle between Ares and Diomedes is one of the most dramatic moments in Greek mythology. Imagine, a mortal fighting the god of war. Ares swung his spear with incredible force, but Athena redirected Diomedes' hand. The spear shot through Ares' body. Ares' roar shook the entire battlefield. The sound was so loud that it stopped the warriors. He fell, his body covered in divine blood, and the excruciating pain made him unable to stand. In that state, Ares did not continue fighting. Instead, he fled to Olympus to complain to his father, Zeus. This scene is very famous. Ares, the feared god of war, is depicted like a child who has lost a fight, crying and complaining to his father. Zeus, who had disliked Ares from the start, shows no sympathy. He views Ares as a disgrace, a useless god. For the Greeks, this story was meaningful. They wanted to demonstrate that even the god of war could be defeated by a brave mortal, especially if that mortal employed strategy and wisdom. This story also reinforced the view that Ares was not a noble god, but rather a brutal, uncontrollable, and often unsuccessful figure. The Trojan War dragged on, and although Ares returned to the battlefield several times, his image was already tarnished. He never managed to secure a decisive victory for Troy. In fact, his presence often brought destruction and shame to himself. Although known as the brutal god of war, Ares also had another passionate side, his love affair with Aphrodite. Aphrodite was the goddess of love and beauty, the wife of Hephaestus, the god of fire and blacksmithing. However, their relationship was not harmonious. Aphrodite felt dissatisfied, and she fell into the arms of Ares. The story of their affair is well known. On numerous occasions, Ares and Aphrodite met secretly, enjoying a passionate, forbidden love. From their union, several children were born, including Phobos and Deimos. However, this affair was eventually discovered. Hephaestus, Aphrodite's legal husband, became suspicious. Using his ingenuity, he created a golden net invisible to the naked eye. One day, when Ares and Aphrodite were together, the net trapped them both, leaving them immobile. Hephaestus then summoned the gods of Olympus to witness the shameful scene. All the gods laughed at the sight of Ares and Aphrodite tangled together, helpless. Ares, usually so valiant on the battlefield, now looked like a humiliated commoner. This story shows the human side of Ares. Although the god of war, he remains fragile in matters of love. In fact, in this story, he's not a fearsome god, but rather a figure ridiculed by all of Olympus. For the Greeks, Ares was a god feared but not revered. He rarely had temples and was rarely worshipped. The Greeks preferred to worship Athena, because for them, true victory was not the result of chaos but of strategy and wisdom. But the Romans saw Ares differently. They adopted the figure of Ares and gave him a new name, Mars. In Roman culture, Mars was a great god, protector of the state, and a symbol of military glory. Mars was revered, worshipped, and even made one of the Romans' primary gods. This shift in image demonstrates the two nations' differing views on war. The Greeks saw war as a disaster to be avoided, while the Romans saw it as a path to glory. Ares' legacy in Greek mythology is a reminder that war always has two sides. It can bring destruction, but it can also produce heroes. Ares is a mirror of humanity's darker side: anger, violence, and bloodlust. Although often viewed negatively, Ares' presence remains crucial to the balance of mythology. He embodies the reality that war can never be completely eradicated from human life. Today, the story of Ares is still told, both as a feared god and a symbol of unbridled human power. He lives on in books, films, and popular culture, as a figure who constantly reminds humanity of the cost of war. Ultimately, the story of Ares teaches us that power without wisdom is only a path to destruction. Ares is not a beloved god, nor is he a revered god, but he remains a reflection of humanity. When humans let anger take over, when we forget strategy and wisdom, when we pursue only violence and bloodlust, that's when Ares rises again. He may be an ancient god, but his shadow still lingers in our world, in every war fought today. The question is, will we continue to let Ares walk the earth, or will we learn to restrain him and choose the path of peace?